People are living longer than ever before. So how can you be sure you'll have enough savings to last through your whole retirement?
For tips, we turn to CBS News senior business analyst Jill Schlesinger. Thank you so much for joining us. We are living longer.
Yeah, sorry and great.
Yeah, I guess so. It's supposed to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, so listen, this is very funny because, I'm a CFP, right? A certified financial planner. I did that for a living. I don't practice anymore, but I remember being in practice and a client saying to me once, I ran a bunch of retirement estimates and I said, you see, you've got to save more because you're going to live a long time. You're really young. And the client said, but what if I die sooner? And I said, that's not a good retirement plan.
All right. The National Institute of Aging estimates that a healthy 30-year-old, Jill, a healthy 30-year-old woman has a 60% chance of living to 90. So I guess the question is, do we just all have to keep on working longer, especially the women?
Well, first of all, there's no doubt that we are living longer. The question really becomes, how do you deal with that? And there's a couple of different ideas here. One is that, yes, of course, you could say, I'll work longer. That's great. And I love the idea. I had a grandfather who worked till he was 88. There are some people who are just programmed to work longer. We know from surveys, people who work longer actually end up being happier. They feel more fulfilled. They feel more connected. They feel more useful. Great. Little problem, though. What happens if you work in an industry where they don't want you when you get older? Or more importantly, what happens if you've got a physical job? If you have a physical job, you may not be able to work longer. So now we go back to, okay, now you got to start saving as early as you possibly can. Right. And this was what makes the argument. We know that when people start in their 20s, they end up having more money long term, and they get into the habit earlier, which is really what we're trying to do, create that habit of saving as early as possible.
Right. You talk about people in their 20s, we know that millennials are actually making less money now than the baby boomers did at the same age. They are carrying a tremendous amount of debt from their education. It's a challenge. How do you save money when you really feel like you need every cent of that paycheck? The idea of siphoning off even a small portion seems painful.
Well, and I absolutely understand that. And there are certainly people who say, I can't do it. Yeah. I just can't. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. However, when we look at surveys from a variety of different sources, they'll say, why are you not saving? And the answer is, I don't have enough money. But deeper into the survey, what happens? We ask the exact same question in a slightly different way, something like, could you save $5 a week? And the answer is yes. So what we know is that there is some teeny capacity in most people. I mean, the vast majority of people can come up with some small amount. Right. How do we capture that? That's the challenge. So, obviously, if you've got a workplace retirement plan, you want to use that, even if it's a teeny tiny amount, especially if there's an employer match. 3%. And I know it feels terrible, but it comes out pre-tax. That's great. But for those people who don't have a plan, maybe you're part of the gig economy, you've got to create some plan on your own. There is a plan through the government. It's called MyRA, okay? Myra, bad name, sorry. For all the Myras out there, sorry. Yeah. But myra.gov is meant to be a savings vehicle for people who have very small dollars to invest. There are no costs associated with it, and you can literally put in like $2 a week if you want to, and you hook it up to your checking account, and that's a great way to get started.
So can anyone participate in that? Like, is there a minimum?
Okay. Yes.
And is it enough to have one retirement account? We hear so much about diversifying within our IRAs, within our 401k plans, within our Myra plans, or should we be looking at several different retirement savings accounts?
Considering that we can barely get people to do one, I'm loath to say yes. The answer to this question is really that if you have an option of using, say, a Roth versus a traditional savings vehicle, there is a difference, right? A Roth means you make the amount of money, you capture that money, it goes into your checking account, then you make a retirement contribution, and that grows tax deferred. When you take the money out later, there's no tax due. Right. When in a traditional 401k, 403b, or traditional IRA, you put the money in pre-tax. The money grows tax deferred. When you retire, no tax due. Okay, so who should use which one? The general rule of thumb is the younger you are, the more the argument tilts towards a Roth IRA. However, or a Roth 401k. But for people who only have a workplace 401k that is traditional, That is the path of least resistance. That's why I want to say to people, just put the money in there. It happens automatically. You don't have to do anything. Just do it.
Yeah, and if you have an employer match, you are leaving money on the table if you're
free
not
money.
maxing it out, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, if you have college loans and you're trying to balance, what do I do first? Pay off student debt or put money in my retirement account? The answer is yes. So you want to put some minimal amount of money in that retirement account to capture the match and also to get into the habit as you are paying down the student loans.
Before you go, I want to ask you about this. You talked about people who say, oh, I'll work till I'm 70 or 80 or whatever, but you can't predict what's going to happen. Another thing that you can't predict is the nature of your health, whether or not you might need assisted living later on. What can you tell us about that? What do we need to sort of remind ourselves of moving forward?
Well, there are a couple of things to remember which you never want to think about when you're 30 years old, but maybe you could talk about this with your parents, and that is that, you know, when you look at long-term care, people erroneously believe that Medicare, your health insurance when you're older Americans, that would cover a nursing home stay or a long-term illness. But it doesn't. It covers some type of rehab after a hospital stay, but it doesn't cover long-term care. That's why when you heard about the Senate health care bill coming out, and people started talking about Medicaid and how that impacted older Americans, this is where it happens. So you're an older American, you've saved a couple $100,000. Things are great, life is good, but one part of the couple becomes ill. That person needs all the resources, drains the resources down, leaving the healthy spouse with not that much money. Then the Medicaid system will come in and help you out. But you have to spend down your assets. That's why we were talking about middle-class people could be hurt by that plan, because 2/3 of nursing home residents who are requiring long-term care, 2/3 of them have used Medicaid at some point in that nursing home stay. So this is a big plan, and it does help people. For those of us who are younger, you know, obviously staying healthy is a great thing, but you really have to understand that you would have to spend down all of your assets to qualify, and that chances are you're going to need some sort of care, so you better be saving a little bit extra money in that retirement plan.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Save, save, save.
You know what I did last night? I begged my nieces and nephews to swear a pinky swear with me that they would always take care of me because I don't have children. So if you're an aunt, what you should be doing is spoiling your nieces and nephews.
Well, those pinky swears are rock solid, Jill.
Totally.
Jill Schlesinger, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Good advice.